Well, here we are. I mean, come on, did you really think I wasn't going to cover this one? I talked about Pretty Little Liars, I talked about the abomination that was Ravenswood, the forgotten horror spin-off of Pretty Little Liars. So, you know, it's only fair that I come back to Marlene King's world to finish the trilogy. So today, we're going to take a look at The Perfectionists. Pretty Little Liars, The Perfectionists, like Ravenswood, is a spin-off of Pretty Little Liars that follows one or two characters from the original show as they try to solve another mystery in another town. The only difference is that Ravenswood takes place during the events of Pretty Little Liars, while The Perfectionists takes place after the events of Pretty Little Liars. It's a sequel, kind of. Both of those spin-offs try to expand on the universe outside of the town of Rosewood, and both of those spin-offs crashed and burned and got cancelled after 10 episodes. We're going to dive into it because, surprisingly enough, I find myself having quite a lot to say about this show. That said, it is fair to mention that I experienced The Perfectionists a bit differently than I did the other shows. I had already seen PLL and Ravenswood, and I approached those videos from the perspective of someone who rewatched the show after several years. But this is different. I had never seen The Perfectionists. I skipped it entirely when it came out. I didn't care. I watched it for the first time specifically for this video. This is my first time experiencing it. Now, if you know me, you know that I am not a big fan of Marlene King's work. For the uninitiated, Marlene King is the creator and showrunner of all three of the Pretty Little Liars shows, and she's not very good at it. And like I said in my original PLL video, I hate to be so critical of her because Marlene King genuinely seems like a really cool person. But then I watch her shows and I start boiling from the inside. And believe me, after this video, you'll understand why. Now, the original Pretty Little Liars ended its run in 2017 after 7 seasons, which was way too long, by the way. And it wouldn't be crazy to say that it did not go well. The ending of Pretty Little Liars is now known as one of the most hated endings in television history. But a few months after the series finale, it was announced that a sequel series was on the way, and that Sasha Pieterse and Janel Parrish, who played two of the main characters in the original show, would be coming back for this new story. And after a lot of waiting and development and mystery, the year 2019 finally saw the release of Pretty Little Liars, The Perfectionists. And then nobody watched it and it was cancelled. But I do want to talk about why I think this show didn't work, and also why it was never going to work with Marlene King as the showrunner. There are a number of factors that contributed to this show falling as embarrassingly flat as it did, and we're gonna break it all down. But before we get into that, I want to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Adam and Eve. Oh yeah, they're back, baby. As you probably already know, Adam and Eve is the #1 adult online store in the world. The whole planet. They're the best at what they do, and it's no surprise because 2021 marks the 50th anniversary of Adam and Eve. They've been around, they know what they're doing. And right now, if you go to adamandeve.com and use code SPACE, you'll get 50% off of one item. And if you live in the US or in Canada, you'll get free shipping. It's perfect. It's almost Christmas, so it's your chance if you want to get a little something for yourself or for your partner, you know what I mean? And if you do, you'll also be contributing to a great cause because 20% of their profit goes to fight the spread of HIV around the world. And that's pretty neat. So as always, thank you to Adam and Eve for sponsoring this video. You guys are the absolute best. And let's get back to The Perfectionists. So before we jump into the spin-off itself, I think it's important to briefly recap the events of Pretty Little Liars that lead to this show. So Pretty Little Liars is a show that revolves around the mysterious disappearance of Alison DiLaurentis in a town called Rosewood. In season 1, she has been missing for a year, and everybody thinks she's dead, and a bunch of shenanigans happen to the friends she left behind as they start getting harassed and tormented by an enigmatic entity only known as A. Now fast forward to season 4, which takes place another year later, it's revealed that Allison has actually been alive this entire time, but she's been living in hiding. After the girls rescue her from who they thought was A at the time, Allison returns to Rosewood and teams up with her old friends to unmask the real A, yada yada yada, CeCe Drake, yada yada yada, and then after a time jump that occurs in season 6, we meet an Allison who is now an adult. She's become a high school teacher and she's married to some guy named Elliot Rollins, who turns out to be yet another murderous psychopath in Rosewood, yada yada yada. Elliot gets his shit rocked by Hanna, blah blah blah. Allison moves on. She then realizes she's in love with Emily, and then she is unwillingly impregnated with Emily's eggs by Spencer's secret evil twin Alex. And long story short, at the end of the show, Allison is married to Emily, they have twins, and she is thriving as a teacher. She gets the perfect happy ending, which then leads us to The Perfectionists. So, The Perfectionist follows Allison, what I assume is a couple of years after the events of Pretty Little Liars. When the show starts, she is moving to a new town named Beacon Heights to start teaching a college class in a fancy school that is known for being extremely strict and for having an army of overachievers as students. They're the best of the best, students who are obsessed with excellency and are under an immense amount of pressure at all times.
At BHU, we'll do whatever it takes to stay on top. We thrive under pressure and strive for perfection.
But when she arrives, Allison immediately senses that something about this place is off, especially when she is greeted to her new place by Mona Vanderwaal, her former nemesis who literally murdered her sister CeCe and also murdered Bethany Young by mistake because she believed she was killing Allison. So yeah, naturally, Allison is immediately skeptical of Mona's presence in town, but she quickly starts to understand that behind the surface level front of perfection everyone is displaying to the public in Beacon Heights, something really dark is going on in this university, and she grows very suspicious of a particular group of students who are all tied to another student named Nolan Hotchkiss. Nolan is the brother of Taylor Hotchkiss, a woman who committed suicide not too long ago, supposedly overwhelmed by the constant pressure of her environment. But that's not all. Nolan is also the heir of an insanely wealthy family. His mother, Claire Hotchkiss, is a powerful matriarch who built a massive empire around the town. Not only is she the founder of Hotchkiss Technologies, the shady security company that watches all over the students of the school, but she's also the founder of Beacon Heights University itself. She owns the school. So, Allison immediately understands that this family is bad news. And as she starts looking into Nolan and asking questions around to find out what's happening here, she comes to realize that everyone is very afraid of Nolan and his mother, but she can't quite figure out why. But it doesn't take long for things to take a seriously dark turn, because the night following Allison's arrival, Nolan Hotchkiss is found dead at the university after having been pushed off the roof by a mysterious attacker. So now, Alison DiLaurentis and Mona Vanderwaal, who used to be literal mortal enemies, have to team up to solve the murder of Nolan. And there you have it, your Pretty Little Liars sequel. It's a little hard to fully explain the premise of the show. I had to leave a lot of things out because the pilot is really messy. It's not a bad pilot, don't get me wrong, but there's just so many things happening, and in typical Marlene King fashion, there's just a bunch of twists being thrown at your face every 5 minutes, so it gets heavy because this pilot also introduces a lot of characters and a lot of storylines, so you have to keep up. For example, it's revealed towards the end of the pilot that Nolan's sister Taylor is actually not dead at all. She faked her suicide and has been living in hiding to attempt to take down Hotchkiss Technologies. Mona is working with a mysterious organization that can keep an eye on her through mirrors and shit. That's never explained, by the way. The whole thing is very unclear. This girl's parents are wanted by the FBI for white-collar crimes and she has no idea where they are. This girl's mom is a senator in the middle of a campaign and there are pictures of her cheating on her wife and it's a whole mess. There's a lot in this episode, but we'll talk about all of that more later. Overall though, despite being a little too convoluted for its own good, the pilot of The Perfectionist is pretty solid. The intrigue is not nearly as strong as the original PLL. I mean, I've talked about how the reason PLL pisses me off so much is because it ruined a truly brilliant premise, but it's still interesting, sort of. The pilot also does a great job at establishing some possible culprits for the murder mystery. The episode essentially shows you in a very effective way that a lot of people in Beacon Heights had reasons to want Nolan dead. Nolan was definitely not an angel. He was actually very similar to what Allison was like before she went missing in the original show. He's extremely manipulative, he's cruel, he toys with people's emotions for fun. Politeness is not his strong suit, and he has a tendency to threaten or blackmail people who don't want to do whatever he asks them to. In other words, he's kind of a dick. The pilot is not perfect, but it is a genuinely promising start to what could be a solid mystery. So, the question becomes, is this sequel deserving? Does it earn the right to hold the same title? Is The Perfectionist a worthy successor to the titan that was Pretty Little Liars? Fuck no! And don't get me wrong, I don't even think The Perfectionist is that bad. It's definitely not good, but I don't think it's necessarily worse than the original PLL. I would even go as far as to say that some aspects of it are better than the original show. So why is it that this show doesn't work? Well, like I said, there are several layers to it, but I think the most obvious problem with The Perfectionist is simply that it's really, really boring. Pretty Little Liars sucks for a multitude of very frustrating reasons, especially in retrospect. But if there's one thing you cannot take away from it, it's the fact that despite all of its issues, Pretty Little Liars was entertaining. The Perfectionist is not. This show is really fucking bland, and unfortunately, it gets more and more bland as it goes. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Before we jump into what doesn't work, I think it's only fair to first address the positives. So let's do that. Number 1, the good stuff. It's gonna be short. Despite the fact that I don't hate this show, I also struggle to pinpoint specific things that I like about it. There's a lot that I dislike, and we're gonna talk about it, but in terms of positives, it's hard because the best parts of the show are just kind of average. I mean, I really like the setting. Beacon Heights is way cooler than Rosewood. It feels more contained, it feels more intimate, which works for the type of mystery we're going for here. I also do like that this show finally decides to get rid of high school. Not only are both of the main characters adults, but we are now dealing with the mystery surrounding college kids, and I think it works pretty well. The Perfectionist also significantly tones down the excessive romance subplots that made the original show really annoying, and it's an especially good thing here because Marlene King is notoriously awful at writing romance. As we're all aware of. There's still romance in the show, and it's still bad, but at least it's not invading the entire identity of the show the way Pretty Little Liars used to do. Also, because I think it's 100% worth mentioning, Janel Parrish is still insanely fun to watch as Mona Vanderwaal. She's clearly having a blast playing this character, and Mona has easily some of the best moments in the entire show.
And in order to catch a psychopath, you want to identify their personality and behavioral traits so that you can know what kind of psychopath you're dealing with.
Thank you, Spencer.
I'm Caitlin.
Yeah, I know.
I actually think Mona was better in this show than she ever was in Pretty Little Liars, and that's saying something because she's a fan favorite from the other show. She's the only element of The Perfectionist that gives it any kind of charisma, and you kind of feel the energy shift every time she's in a scene. Let's see. Yeah, I think that was it. Those are the only elements of the show that I genuinely liked. It's not much, but it's something. Number 2, the bad stuff. There's a lot of it. Okay, this is where we really dive in, because individually, the elements of the show that don't work are not that dramatic, but when you put all of those elements together, the bad stuff becomes astronomical. You'll see what I mean. I think the biggest element of the show that does not work, which is not going to be a surprise if you're familiar with anything made by Marlene King, it's the characters. The characters suck. Like, a lot. And again, no surprise here, Marlene King is famous for her mediocre and incredibly inconsistent character writing, and this show does not fix that problem at all. For one, I think The Perfectionist further proves the fact that Alison DiLaurentis does not work as a protagonist. This character is at her best when she's a villain. It's too bad though, because this show's version of Alison is kind of a victim of the terrible writing she got in the last few seasons of Pretty Little Liars. Her character was completely ruined in the previous show, and now this show is trying to work with a character that is essentially just a pale shadow of its former self. However, I'm gonna be fair, the show does fix a few things about Alison. I do like that she uses her wits more. This version of Alison definitely feels like the reformed mean girl they wanted her to be at the end of PLL. She's no longer the weak and defenseless Alison the writers turned her into in season 7. Here, you see her relying on her old tricks to get a hold of the situation around her. Like, you can tell the old Alison is still somewhere in there. She's still insanely manipulative and calculated and even dangerous if need be. But now she doesn't use those abilities for her own desire for mischief, but she actually uses them to help people. I like that she has to fight her impulses, but there's still a serious lack of self-awareness when it comes to her past, and that's a problem with the writing. You see, the writers treat Alison like she's just a former mean girl, but if you really take a look at PLL, it's absolutely not that soft of a case. It's actually way more messed up than this. Alison caused the deaths of dozens of people. She is the point of origin of a literal massacre that took place in Rosewood. Most of the people who died during the events of Pretty Little Liars would 100% still be alive if it weren't for Alison's shenanigans. And it's not even counting the amount of people that almost died because of her, or the people like Jenna, who is literally blind because of her. Alison heavily contributed to destroying lives and destroying families in some of the darkest ways imaginable, but the writers ignore that constantly. She's not just a former mean girl, and that's why this character does not work as one of the good guys. I said it in my PLL video, and I'll say it again. Alison DiLaurentis is only a good character when the writers commit to her being a villain.
Why am I really here?
After The Perfectionist was cancelled, Sasha Pieterse, who plays Alison, did an interview in which she says that she likes to think that Alison got her happy ending.
I think Emily and Alison are together and they've started fresh and are raising the kids somewhere and are happy. I feel like Alison would have eventually gone back and taught at Hollis and just kind of, finally lived a more peaceful life and found herself better.
So if it's up to you, though, Emerson is back together.
Absolutely.
They're raising those babies.
Yep.
They're all
Hashtag
good.
Emerson forever.
Now, I love Sasha Pieterse. I think she's cool, and obviously she played that character for 10 years, so she has an attachment to Alison that none of us can relate to. But I gotta be honest, I completely disagree with her take on how Alison's story should end. I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think it makes sense for a character like Alison DiLaurentis to get a perfect happy ending. I just can't compute that. I actually really like that The Perfectionist reveals that Alison and Emily are getting a divorce because Emily was unable to get over Alison's past actions, and she ended up leaving her because of it, which then prompted Alison to come to Beacon Heights in search of a new beginning. I like that a lot. It's the most realistic take on their relationship they could have possibly come up with, and it's actually good writing. I mean, I get that they did it just so that Alison could get love interest in The Perfectionist, but in the grand scheme of the story, and especially for Alison's journey as an excessively flawed character, this was actually one of the most compelling elements of the show, even though it was barely explored. Not getting the perfect happy ending she dreamed of with Emily puts everything back into question for Alison. She doesn't know if she's ever going to be able to put her past behind her, and in losing the only person who ever truly loved her, she's starting to doubt she even deserves to be able to put her past behind her. I like to think that she will never escape who she used to be because the consequences of her actions were just too big and horrifying.
Emily loves me. She just can't get past the past.
I thought you guys were happy.
We are. And then we're not.
Her final line in The Perfectionist is, "I'm afraid I'm too broken to be fixed." And I think that's a great representation of what this version of Alison boils down to. Giving her a happy ending is the worst thing you can do for her narratively. It's so lazy and boring, and I hate that idea. Anyways, all of that to say that Alison does not work as one of the good guys. It doesn't feel genuine, and it will never feel genuine because her redemption arc was ass and most people did not buy it. It's like the writers see Alison as Prince Zuko when really she's always been more like Azula. And I absolutely hate that the writers tried to make her this sort of mentor to the college kids in their situations of crisis. It feels weirdly out of place. It's like Marlene watched a season of How to Get Away with Murder and she was like, "Oh, we can do that? We can do the same thing, and Alison is gonna be the Annalise Keating of the show." But it just doesn't work because Alison was never given the necessary writing to match the thin line between light and dark that Annalise Keating navigates all the time. Again, Alison works best as a villain. She is not a great character. Anyways, moving on. The motivations for certain characters are also super off. Maybe it's because the show was cancelled and they took too much time to give us context, but I do not understand why Mona is in this story. I'm happy that she's here, don't get me wrong. She's easily the most likable part of the show, but I just do not get why she wants to help those kids so damn much. If there's one thing we know about Mona Vanderwaal as a character is that she only ever acts in her own interests. She doesn't care about people. That's her whole thing. I'm glad that she's here, but I don't understand why she is here. Also, Mona starts sleeping with a student halfway through the season, and I mean, at least he's of legal age, which is a step up from the last inappropriate relationship. But given the fact that Mona works at the university, I'm pretty sure this is still not okay. And you can tell the writers were really self-conscious about it because they made a point of having the line, "We are both consenting adults," spoken in the show, literally.
Claire has no leverage. We can still see each other.
I made her a promise, and I plan to honor it.
We are two consenting adults.
It's still inappropriate. You just can't help yourself, can you? Did you not learn anything from Ezra? Jesus Christ. Aside from that, I will say that this show is at its best when Alison and Mona are on the screen. The other main characters, Dylan, Ava, and Caitlin, Jesus, are they boring. These characters are so fucking bland and terribly written, and unfortunately, a lot of this show focuses on them, and it really slows things down. The scenes where it's just the three of them are the times where I had to fight not to quit on the show because they were putting me to sleep, man. That said though, and weirdly enough, the dynamic between these characters makes way more sense to me than the dynamics in PLL ever did. I don't think I mentioned that in my PLL video, and I know that's a thing thousands of people have already talked about online. I'm not bringing anything new to the table here, but I never really bought into the friendship between Aria, Spencer, Hanna, and Emily, which is odd because Marlene constantly talked about how the show was about their unconditional friendship first and foremost, but it never really felt like that. The original Liars remind me a lot of the Avengers. I know I'm not alone in this because people have talked about it online at length, but the Avengers never really felt like a family. They always felt like co-workers, and it's the same for Aria, Spencer, Hanna, and Emily. The writers really want you to believe they're so close, they're like a family. But no, it never feels like they are. They just feel like people who are brought together due to their circumstances and they get along and everything, but they never actually feel like best friends. That's just not what their dynamic is. The trio from The Perfectionists, though, works way more in terms of dynamic because them not being close is the whole point. They barely know each other, they don't really like each other, but publicly they have to appear like they've been best friends for years and they have to appear like they're grieving a person they actually hated. It's an interesting concept, especially because now that shit's getting real, they all have to learn to trust people they don't know anything about because their lives depend on it. I like that, and I bought into that. It's executed fairly well. A lot of their bonding scenes feel forced because the writing and dialogue is mid as fuck, but their dynamic makes sense, and it making sense also makes it interesting. But it's not to say that every dynamic in The Perfectionists is as effective, and that is where we get into one of my biggest issues with this entire show. And that issue is Alison and Mona being friends is completely stupid and I hate it. Now I gotta admit, I'm gonna be honest, this bothers me way more than it should, but I don't care. These two should not be friends this easily, and the fact that they are feels really forced, and I find that really annoying, because the dynamic between the two in this show could have been fucking legendary if handled correctly. Let me explain why. Mona, as a character, is a constant reminder of who Alison used to be as a person, because characters always treat Mona like she's just some crazy bitch, but here, it's significant because all of the mental issues Mona has that make her so unstable were caused by Alison when they were younger. Every single problem Mona has had in her life was directly caused by Alison's endless bullying and violent outbursts. She was insulted, threatened, and physically assaulted by Alison. And it took such a toll on her mental health that she ended up in a mental facility more than once. And in The Perfectionists, Mona is very clearly shown to still be struggling with some sort of dissociative personality disorder. Way into her adulthood, she still hasn't recovered from Alison's bullying. If Alison is such a good person now, I think the writers should have made an effort to show some sort of remorse around her actions, instead of constantly referring to Mona as crazy. Like I said, Mona's entire character is a reminder of who Alison used to be. She is a direct result of Alison's past. Mona is a product of her mistakes. The fact that the writers did not explore that at all in this show is completely baffling to me and just really disappointing. These two meet again after years and they immediately become best friends, and I hate it. But also, on the other side of things, Alison shouldn't have any reason to trust Mona. Like, ever! Mona is an individual that almost got her killed countless times. And in case you forgot, Mona literally killed Alison's sister. She killed CeCe Drake, who was also Uber A, and they never really discussed that. Instead, it's just played as a joke in a couple of scenes.
We were minors. Those records are sealed.
Where did you grow up?
Rosewood, Pennsylvania.
You remember when A made Hannah eat all those cupcakes? Who's A?
I really don't like it. These two should not be getting along like old friends who had a couple of arguments and are learning to get past it. I'm sorry, that's just not what their dynamic is. Alison and Mona are literally mortal enemies. Mona actually tried to kill Alison and killed the wrong person. They went head to head in life and death situations. They both caused the death of dozens of people and they never buried the hatchet. They just moved on with their lives away from one another. This friendship does not make sense. It is not justified, it's lazy, and I can't stand it. The characters are also where the Marlene King isms of the story really start to show. You see, Marlene has this tendency to recycle characters and storylines in her shows, and The Perfectionists is probably the biggest example of that. There's this detective character in the show called Dana Booker, who kind of serves as the threatening presence trying to solve the mystery and backing the protagonists into a corner as she gets closer and closer to their secrets, and that would have been interesting if Marlene hadn't already done that 3 times before. Dana Booker is just another Wilden. Marlene recycled that character again. For those who don't know, in Pretty Little Liars, Wilden was the threatening detective who was shady and was backing the girls into a corner. But then Marlene killed Wilden off in season 4, so later that season she decided to just make a new Wilden, and we were introduced to Detective Holbrook, who is essentially just Wilden with a different face. They're the exact same character. But then Holden was written out of the show, so Marlene was like, hey, let's do that again. Just the exact same thing. And so we were introduced to Detective Tanner. And surprise, surprise, Tanner is the exact same character as Wilden and Holbrook. She serves the exact same function. She's just a woman now. That's the only difference. And now, in The Perfectionists, we have Dana Booker, who is just a literal copy and paste of Tanner, but to the point where it's just funny. They even look the same. It's like they went out of their way to find an actress that looks as close as Roma Mafia as humanly possible. If you've watched Pretty Little Liars, the character of Dana Booker will feel so fucking lazy to you. Every single one of her scenes just feel like Marlene and her team copy-pasted scenes from PLL in their scripts for the Perfectionists. And to be honest, most of the character writing in the Perfectionists is spectacularly dumb. It's kind of a signature Marlene King thing to completely disregard events of the story and make the characters say things that simply do not line up with what we just watched. Most of the time it happens when she tries to make a scene heartwarming and the characters are not making any sense.
I'm just glad that we're not alone, right? That we're in this together.
Yeah, I mean, are we together? We did make a good team out there.
No, you didn't. You didn't make a good team at all. First of all, you didn't accomplish anything. You went to search a cabin in the woods. You didn't find anything. Allison caught you there, pointed out how stupid your method was, and for the 5 minutes you were gone, somebody snuck into your car and placed a dead rat in your trunk just to fuck with you because it's that easy. That night was a complete failure on every front. You guys are not a good team. That's an issue with every single one of Marlene's shows. Inconsistent character writing. If you want me to feel the characters' bonding moments, make the dialogue consistent with the experiences we actually see them go through. It's the same thing that bothered me with PLL. I hated how everyone was always talking about how smart Aria is, and the writers really wanted you to believe it, and the characters were always saying how you can rely on Aria and blah blah blah, but that never reflected a single one of her actions throughout the show. Aria is not smart. She makes terrible decisions all the time, and she's impulsive as hell. She's brave, I'll give her that. She's very courageous, but she never thinks before she acts. Most of her decisions in the show are the result of an emotional response, and it always ends up being the wrong decision. Aria is not a smart character, and surprise, surprise, having other characters constantly say she's smart does not make her any smarter. And the same goes for the Perfectionist trio. They're stupid and they're terrible at investigating. I don't care what you say. Actions matter more than words. It's true in real life, and it also applies to character writing. The characters are also victim of the dumb writing that annoyed fans with Aria, Spencer, Hanna, and Emily. These people know if they want to survive, they need to stick together and trust each other and tell each other everything of importance to the case, and yet they systematically make the choice to lie to each other and hide crucial information from one another that could save their lives. And most of the time, they're hiding shit for no good reason, aside from the fact that the writers are desperately trying to find tension somewhere. And it pisses me off because it not only makes the characters stupid as hell, it also makes them all very annoying, which is not helped by the fact that these three have no chemistry, and I mean none.
That's so not funny.
I think it's pretty funny.
I don't know, I think it's pretty funny too.
The characters' plans in this show never make any fucking sense. And it's kind of stupid, but it's also kind of funny. First of all, for some reason, Caitlin, Dylan, and Ava just refuse to talk to Dana, who's investigating the murder of Nolan, and it's a little dumb because they have no reason to do that. They could literally just tell her the truth about everything they know, and Dana would be on their side because they didn't actually do anything wrong. They're innocent. They have no reason to lie. Dana is trying to do the exact same thing that they're doing. The only reason Dana is convinced one of them killed Nolan is because they keep lying to Dana when she questions them, and they keep getting caught in a lie.
How bad a secret was it? Bad enough to want to kill Nolan to keep it hidden?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Just tell her the truth. She's gonna help you. You have the same goal, and she has massive resources to achieve that goal. The show keeps saying they can't talk to her because of their secrets. Ooh, they have so many secrets. But it doesn't make any sense because, first of all, Dana already knows their secrets. Dylan's secret is that he cheated on his boyfriend with Nolan that one time, and Nolan used that against him to keep him under his control. Okay, Dana already knows that. Caitlin's secret is that her mom cheated on her other mom and the scandal could jeopardize her political campaign. Okay, Dana already knows that. And Ava doesn't even have a secret. Her parents are on the run from the FBI and Dana keeps questioning her about their whereabouts, but Ava genuinely doesn't know where her parents are. So she has no reason to be shady about it. The only information of importance they were hiding is the fact that Ava was Nolan's real girlfriend in secret and Caitlin was only pretending to be his perfect girlfriend in public to appease his mom. Which is not that big of a deal because Dana already knows that Nolan had something on all of them that he used to force them to do whatever he asked. And sure, it could look suspicious in terms of their motivations, but if they just talked to her and explained all of it, they'd be fine. You know why? Because they didn't actually kill him. The only reason Dana thinks they're shady is because they keep acting shady for no reason. Stop being so stupid. It's the same thing with the bootleg Newt Scamander guy at the end of the show. And this is actually another huge problem with Marlene's writing. Characters never clarify things, and Marlene just expects you to ignore that. Let me explain. Towards the end of the season, Caitlin realizes that Newt Scamander has been hiding some secret, and then he says that he's in trouble because of what he's done. So everybody comes to the conclusion that he killed Nolan to be able to be with Caitlin. So the characters make a whole plan to trick Newt Scamander into confessing to the murder while Caitlin records him. But it goes wrong, and Taylor, who can't stand to be in the presence of her brother's killer, shoots him impulsively and they don't get the confession they wanted. Here's the thing though. This is exactly where I can pinpoint specifically why I hate Marlene's writing so much. Newt Scamander never actually said that he killed Nolan. He confessed to doing something that's wrong, but he never actually explained what he did. This entire hyperclimactic storyline is 100% based on the characters just assuming that he killed Nolan, based on absolutely nothing. Because none of these 6 morons, not even Caitlin, who is the one Newt Scamander started to confess to, ever thought to ask him, hey, so what exactly did you do? No! They all start treating him as if he had actually said out loud that he killed Nolan, which he never did. Whatever wrongdoing he committed, he only ever referred to it as what I did, and he never elaborated.
If I tell the police what I did, then my life will be over, and so will yours, because you know why I did it.
And the part that pisses me off so much is that when Caitlin confronts him again to try to get his confession on tape, she only refers to his wrongdoings as what you did and never fucking elaborates. Everyone is in this life or death situation where they could find out who murdered Nolan, but they don't because suddenly not a single one of these characters is able to speak clearly, and everyone is now communicating as vaguely as possible for no fucking reason. Even after Newt Scamander gets shot and everyone talks to the police, Caitlin still tells Dana and the police that Newt told her what he did, even though he never did. He never told you what he did. And I just, why are you like this? Your shows could actually be successful if you just stop treating your audience like idiots for 5 seconds. What the fuck? This is the most Marlene King thing ever. Relying on your audience to overlook an outstanding amount of stupidity from characters that are supposed to be smart. It's infuriating. And obviously, just like the original show, these characters get an ending that is not earned at all, where out of nowhere, they start referring to each other as family, even though they've been around each other for like, what, 2 weeks at the very most? I mean, who knows? This is Marlene King. We've well established in previous videos that she has no idea how to write a coherent timeline. So yeah, for all I know, it's been 12 years since episode 1 and I just didn't notice. But it still feels incredibly forced, especially because the writers gave the same line of dialogue to every character in the episode to talk about how they're family now.
I didn't say it was gonna be easy, Dylan. But I lived through this. My friends and I, we didn't just survive. We became family.
You said it was important when I met you, but now I know it's really true. I finally got friends who are like family.
I think you'd like it there.
My life is here now. With friends who have become like my family.
I hate it. I also think it's fucking hilarious how the characters just constantly break into each other's places. These people never knock or ring the doorbell. They just kind of walk in, even if the person is obviously not home.
Ava? Ava?
What? Why would you go in? She's clearly not here. Who does that? Oh, and then out of nowhere, she just... Why? Why? And the worst part of it is that right after, Ava walks into her room and finds her there, and this is her justification as to why she's inside of her personal space.
Oh, hey. Door was unlocked. Is that your lunch?
Bro, what the fuck? Listen, I love my friends very dearly, but if I ever come home one day and I find one of them just chilling in my room like it's nothing, and the first thing they tell me is the door was unlocked, homie, we need to talk boundaries. And you know what? Now that I think about it, it's even worse in the case of this scene because these two barely know each other and they don't even like each other. Imagine going home one day and finding some girl from school you don't really like just hanging out by herself in your apartment because your door was unlocked and they took it as an invitation to come in. Bro, I might have to grab a lightsaber.
He needs some milk.
I know this sounds like a nitpick, and it kind of is. And I know a lot of shows and movies make characters just walk into people's homes, but The Perfectionists does it so often that it's genuinely distracting. Like, it actually took me out of the show a few times. I don't think there's a single scene where Allison goes home and someone hasn't broken in while she was gone.
Hi, Allison. I hope this isn't a bad time.
Got a minute?
What the hell? Are you crazy?
Sorry.
What the hell, Allie?
Yo! Don't do that! I'ma grab a lightsaber! Oh yeah, I just had to point it out. The amount of scenes in this show that starts with somebody just walking into a home that isn't theirs just baffles me. It's such a bizarre writing choice, I seriously don't understand it. Oh, also this goes without saying because this is a Marlene King show, but the dialogue is just as terrible and hilarious as the other PLL shows.
I need your help. Forget it. I'm the dead girl, and I'm gonna stay gone.
Oh, and if I can allow myself another little nitpick, the show does this very annoying thing with its music, where you constantly get orchestral renditions of top 40 music. There's some string covers of Billie Eilish, some Imagine Dragons, Shawn Mendes, and for some reason, there's just way too much Lady Gaga. I hate that trend. I find it so dumb. It bothered me with Bridgerton, and it still bothers me with The Perfectionists. Can we stop doing that? Can we let that trend die already? Anyways, believe it or not, this show gets dumber than it already is, so let's move on to what I consider to be the biggest problems with this show. Number 3, the villain and the cycles. So the big bad wolf of The Perfectionists is a person whose identity we never find out because, well, the show was canceled. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm not even mad. I don't care at all. Why? Well, probably because, 1, knowing Marlene King, if the show had not been canceled, we probably would have waited 5 or 6 years before finding out who it is, and 2, because remember what I said about Marlene King recycling ideas constantly? Well, yeah, just hold on to your butt cheeks. You see, in Pretty Little Liars, we are looking for the identity of A, and at the end of season 2, we find out A is Mona. But then there was a season 3 coming, and Marlene was like, okay, we need a new villain. What if we just make another A? So then we had to find the identity of the new A, more commonly known as Big A, and then in season 6, we find out in the most incoherent twist of all time that Big A is CeCe Drake. And after 6 long seasons, people were like, wow, closure, finally. But Marlene King was like, okay, there's 1 more season to go, and we need a new villain. We could do something new, because it's been 6 years of the same thing repeated over and over. But what if we just made another A for a 3rd time? And lo and behold, she recycled it again. And the final season deals with another A, except this time it's called AD. And it's no secret that by the end of PLL's run, audiences were really fucking done with the show's formula. Mostly because people realized Marlene didn't actually know where she was going with her mysteries, but also because the whole thing was insanely repetitive and boring. But then we get to The Perfectionists. And the big villain of The Perfectionists is a mysterious entity people only know as the Professor. The Professor is formally introduced in the finale, and the name sounds cool, it's intriguing, but then you watch the show and you realized, oh yeah, it's just another A. I'm not kidding. Believe it or not, Marlene recycled it again. This is the 4th one. It's the exact same concept. Nothing is different. The Professor is everything you've already seen before. It sees everything. It hears everything. It even reverts back to the same tricks as A. It creates traps. It leaves dead animals in cars. It leaves threatening notes. It sends cryptic text. It's the exact same shit you've already watched for 7 seasons that went nowhere. Even the villain's operation is based on the same idea of constant spying and tormenting. In Pretty Little Liars, they call it the game, and in The Perfectionists, they call it the experiment. But it's the same shit. It's just A, but with another jacket. It's the narrative equivalent of the phrase new phone who dis. And that's the biggest problem with The Perfectionists. It's nothing new. Of course this show was canceled. Of course people didn't watch it. This show is all of the things fans of PLL were invested in and continuously disappointed by for almost a decade, but just repackaged into a quote-unquote new show that tries way too hard to convince you it's different without ever actually doing something different. That's like breaking a kid's toy, painting it another color, and then giving it back to the kid and try to convince him it's a new toy. It might work for 3 seconds, but then the kid is gonna realize it's the same toy, and it's still broken. Obviously, people were not going to trust this show. The character conflicts are the same. The emotional storylines are the same. same. Even specific plot points in the progression of the mystery are plot points that were recycled from the other show. You don't believe me? Check this out. In season 1 of Pretty Little Liars, Hanna gets a hold of important information that can help them solve the mystery. But before she gets a chance to tell anyone, an unknown attacker hits her with a car. In The Perfectionists, Caitlin gets hold of important information that can help them solve the mystery. But before she gets a chance to tell anyone, you guessed it, an unknown attacker hits her with a car. In Pretty Little Liars, Aria finds out that her dad cheated on her mom, and after she tells him she knows the truth, her dad asks her to keep it a secret, which she reluctantly agrees to, and it causes a lot of tension between them. In The Perfectionists, Caitlin finds out that her mom cheated on her other mom, and after she tells her she knows the truth, her mom asks her to keep it a secret, which she reluctantly agrees to, and it causes a lot of tension between them. In Pretty Little Liars, we find out that Alison faked her death and left town because somebody tried to kill her, and her only way to figure out who did it was to let everybody believe she died so she could operate from the shadows because she couldn't trust anyone, including her own mother. In The Perfectionists, we find out that Taylor faked her death and left town because somebody tried to kill her, and her only way to figure out who did it was to let everybody believe she died so she could operate from the shadows because she couldn't trust anyone, including her own mother. It's the same thing. That's why it feels so bland and uninspired. This entire show is just Marlene King regurgitating her own previous work. There's nothing new here. Anyways, in classic Marlene King fashion, we are dealing with a villain with no face who does creepy things, but we never find out why they're doing the creepy things they're doing. So after a while, all you can do is wait for something to happen. But, you know, unfortunately this show was cancelled, so nothing happened. And also, there's a real lack of stakes in this show, and you feel it. The second half of The Perfectionist gets really boring. Like, it's bad. The last 4 episodes of the season are an absolute snooze fest. Like, I really struggled to get through them. Even the finale, surprisingly, is one of the most uninteresting episodes of the show. It's so dull. I was trying really hard to pay attention, but inside my head it was like that video of Timothy Chalamet listening to All Day by Kanye West at a party.
All day, nigga.
And of course, because this is a Marlene King show, the season just ends with no answers about anything. You literally end episode 10 just as clueless as you were in episode 1. Nothing was accomplished this entire season. You're still in square one. We still don't know who killed Nolan. We still don't know who the professor is. We still don't know who tried to kill Taylor. We still don't know why Claire Hotchkiss is so shady all the time. By the way, what a waste of Kelly Rutherford. She doesn't do anything in this show. We still don't know who hit Caitlin with the car. We still don't know what the goal of the experiment is, and the funniest of all, we still don't know what Bootleg Newt Scamander actually did. It's the exact same bullshit as Pretty Little Liars. This show is obsessed with making you ask questions, but it doesn't actually give a fuck about answering any of them. The Perfectionist is just the proof that Marlene did not learn a single thing from the backlash of PLL and its ending. She's making all of the same mistakes in this show. We probably would have gotten the answer to just one of those questions in like season 5. So yeah, The Perfectionists. A bit of a disappointing adventure. This was the final breath of Marlene King's decade as the architect of the PLL universe, and it ended with The Sound of Wind. Is it the worst show ever made? No, I don't think it is. But it's also not difficult to look at this show and immediately understand why it didn't work out. And honestly, despite the fact that I'm not a fan of her work at all, I do feel bad for Marlene King about losing the franchise. But I also understand why Warner Brothers did not trust her to reboot the show again. Audiences were never going to trust Marlene after the ending of Pretty Little Liars. They already didn't trust her to stick the landing with the original PLL after the terrible reveal of CeCe Drake as Big A in season 6. And seeing that this show didn't actually have anything new to offer, Yeah, no surprise, people are not interested in it. It's kinda sad that something as big as Pretty Little Liars went out with such a lack of excitement. I guess I'm gonna have to circle back to it with Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, the reboot/sequel that is being made by Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa, aka the showrunner of Riverdale. I'm pretty sure it's coming out in 2022, and I have absolutely no faith in it being any good. But Roberto is a good friend of Greg Berlanti's, so he's gonna keep getting major franchises on a silver platter to ruin and get cancelled after 2 years max. Yay. Anyways, I need to go to bed. Goodbye, original PLL universe. I'm sorry in advance for what Roberto is about to do to your potential legacy. Good luck with that. It's been real. Somebody give Kelly Rutherford a good role, please.